Welcome to Banting Banter. This is your host, Banting. And now Banting Banter is going to take a new tact because I've become more concerned with the church and culture and how we are interacting. One of the things that the COVID-19 pandemic has made me think about more is how the church interacts with the culture around it. And now on top of the COVID-19 situation, we now have these protests and riots, and yes, I separate the two, happening in the States and around the world. And this adds another level of complexity to our cultural situation. Just to pick an issue out of the pot of many issues we could talk about, I want to talk briefly about what should we think about these protests and riots. And yes, this will be very brief, and I hope to do it more often. But what should we think about these protests and riots? Well, I think peaceful protests are a good thing. In fact, as a Christian and as a Protestant, we get the word Protestant from the German word for protest. So really, we are just a bunch of protesters. In fact, as Protestants, we are protesting against the false doctrines and the corruption of the Catholic Church. So if you are a part of this church or a Protestant, you're a protester. So protesting is a way of expressing and airing one's views or grievances. And this is a good thing. And any free culture will have peaceful protests. Okay? But if we look to Jesus, riots are not in any way a part of the Christian life. Jesus, when he was about to be arrested and Peter lops off the ear of the high priest servant, he says, no, we're not doing the violent riot protest thing. And he heals the high priest servant's ear. So there is no time and no place for a violent protest when we follow Jesus. They're destructive. And they are contrary to us living a quiet and peaceful life. Okay? And at this point, I'm not going to dive into the Black Lives Matter movement. But as Christians, we of course think that mankind is made in the image of God and is worthy of all respect and dignity, no matter the ethnicity or culture, that everybody is due those things, respect and dignity. One quick comment that I find interesting, though, is that you will never eradicate sin, and yes, racism is a sin, through policy. You can discourage it, you can punish it, but you will never rid humanity of it. There will always be racism, sexism, hate crimes, prejudice of every kind, as long as you live in this fallen world, because that is the state of mankind. Fallen. Humanity, we as humanity are naturals at sinning, and policy won't stop that. The gospel is the only answer to sin. Is it responsible to protest during a pandemic? And now this is something that everyone might have a different opinion about. I don't think, quite frankly, that it's medical professionals' job to decide what is worthy of protest and what is not. But that is a whole other can of worms that we will leave for another day. One subject, though, that we'll end with that I find deeply disturbing is the fact that the media and the narrative that they are pushing on us, that some Christians seem to eat up as gospel truth, and I find that deeply disturbing. For instance, I find it deeply disturbing that the fact that China is systematically persecuting churches in this COVID pandemic, and we hear nothing of it. They are destroying buildings, and some provinces are even banning online meetings. Yes, online. Not physical meetings, but online services. But you won't hear any of that in the news. Because quite frankly, they just don't care. But I hope you do. I hope that you will start to think biblically, and that you will think biblically about these cultural situations that we are in. And that we will grow in faith and trust in God's word. Until next time, this is Banting, just bantering away. Grace and peace.